Alright, what's going on, guys? Vinland Saga, chapter 173. Yes, I will be doing these reviews from now on. I finally caught up with the manga. But with that said, this chapter is titled Sailing West, Part 7. And let's get right into it. So the chapter starts off with Thorfinn. He's riding a horse, and it looks like he's making a deal with Halfdan. And not only is he getting a couple of horses, but he's also getting some sheep as well. So he's preparing for his journey to Vinland. And Halfdan mentions to Thorfinn, you know, he's got some old material lying around, some old swords and shields and arrows and other combative supplies. And he's like, look, you're gonna need this in the new land that you're going to, and I'll sell it to you for a cheap price. Now, of course, up until this point, we know that Thorfinn has turned over a new leaf, a Leif Erikson, if you will. But yeah, he doesn't want to fight anymore. He doesn't want to use weapons because he knows when there's a sword in his hand that blood fills his eyes and he can't think clearly. So he would rather avoid it if he can. But as Halfdan sort of elucidates, Thorfinn is sort of going through an experiment right now. An experiment that could be quite costly. I mean, if he goes to Vinland and the Native Americans there decide to be hostile, it could be very bloody, and they might run back to Iceland or wherever with their tails in between their legs, having wasted a bunch of money and lives and time. So it's a huge risk. And then Halfdan sort of does a thought experiment with Thorfinn. He draws his sword and he points it at Thorfinn and he threatens to kill him. And then he's like, do you believe me? And Thorfinn says no. And Halfdan's like, well, you are correct. And the reason that is because there is punishment on this island. If I were to do something against you, or anyone for that matter, they would punish me. They would take me to the gallows. They would hang me. And that would be the end. So very strict punishment. Like, the idea is they live in a harmonious society. However, the repercussions for going against the laws are very severe. This is what is known as mechanical solidarity, something Emil Durkheim talked about. He was a sociologist that sort of elucidated some of the themes of past societies and modern societies. So in past societies, everyone sort of had the same job. Everyone, like for example, where Halfdan lives, you know, everyone raises sheep and fish, and they all sort of do the same thing. So they all kind of know what it's like to do the same job, and they all sort of play by the rules, if you will. Everyone knows kind of how to do everything. They can take care of themselves. So if anyone sort of betrays that trust, they excommunicate that person. Now, what Thorfinn is aiming to do is sort of the next stage, which is organic solidarity. It's more of a specialization of jobs and roles in society. So when he goes to Vinland, his whole idea is that we're gonna grow wheat there, and we're gonna have sheep and horses and such, and we're gonna sort of depend on the natives there, who are gonna have a different set of skills, different set of specialization, and due to us sharing that and becoming reliant on each other, we'll sort of have a invisible justice system, if you will. So if one component of the economy deteriorates or doesn't fulfill its expectations, then there will be social scorn and, you know, punishment in a different way. Probably not by death, but by some sort of other means. So basically what Thorfinn calls it is interdependence, that everyone sort of depends on each other. Sort of like the human body in a way. If you think about the human body, there's different organs. There's the brain, there's the heart. The heart's gonna pump blood to the rest of the body. The lungs are gonna oxygenate the blood. The brain is in control of everything. It's gonna control all the movements and such. The kidneys are going to filtrate all of the toxins out of the body. The gut is going to digest everything. So on their own, they can't survive. I mean, one organ, you can't just survive on one organ. But if they all fulfill their roles, then everything goes smoothly, and then everything works out swimmingly. And to kind of further sort of expound upon this point, if one organ fails, like say your kidneys start to fail, well, then eventually that leads to failure of other organs as well, because they have to compensate in other ways, which puts more strain on them. So that's the whole idea of the society that Thorfinn's aiming for, that we won't need an army or like any sort of king. We'll just sort of depend on each other, and hopefully it all works out. Now, we'll see if that hopefully comes to fruition or if things go sideways. I feel like, if Thorfinn and the gang have one bad wheat harvest, and the Native Americans are relying on that wheat harvest to trade with them, and that could really sour relations, because the Native Americans might spend more time growing corn or whatnot, time that they could have been doing something else because they were expecting to get this wheat from Thorfinn and the gang, and then they don't have it. And they're like, well, hey, we got nothing for the winter. Can you spare us some, and then we'll get you back next year? So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. As with any society, you got your pluses and your minuses. Now, everything's sort of wrapping up at the end of the chapter, and Haften proposes to Thorfinn, hey, would you like to be my son? Would you like to inherit my land? So this is very interesting. We know that Haften's son is sort of exploring the world at this point, and he doesn't really seem keen on inheriting his father's land and riches. And with Thorfinn not having a father at the moment, Haften's sort of a surrogate father for Thorfinn. So this would sort of be a way of live out that father-son dynamic and, have a reliable future that he can sort of cultivate with his new family. So we'll have to see how that plays out. This really does open the door for Thorfinn possibly coming back. So like if things don't work out in Vinland, Thorfinn's kind of got this card in the back of his pocket. He can come back to Haften's farm and he can make it his own. So that sort of makes me think, especially given the history of the Vikings in Vinland, it makes me think that maybe things will work out initially with Thorfinn and the Native Americans, but then things will go sideways, and then Thorfinn will go back to Haften and be like, hey, I'll take you up on your offer. So yeah, very interesting chapter, guys. Good stuff. I just hope that they go to Vinland relatively soon. It seems like these last 10 or 12 chapters, ever since the end of the Baltic Sea invasion, where they were fighting over Jomsburg, everything's sort of been very slow and methodical. We kind of ended the battles, and now we're just sort of in the planning stages of moving to Vinland. So it's going to be very interesting when we finally go there. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now. Thanks for listening, and catch you on the flip side.